Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Robo Celestial here with a new video for you. Welcome to What If All Might Was Deku's dad. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. Welcome to this new video and what if series, which you could tell from the title is called What If All Might Was Deku's dad. You can probably already tell what this what if is all about from that alone, so there won't be much to explain. Basically, we'll be exploring the idea of All Might being Deku's real completely related father and see how it would change the story of My Hero Academia. Now, to set the story off, we need to make it so All Might meets Aka, Deku's mom, which is easy to do. Not long after All Might, or Toshinori as we'll be referring to him as for now, gets into UA, he ends up bumping into a young lady about his age while on his way home from school. While he's at the train station, he gets distracted and walks into a girl, causing her to drop everything that she was holding onto the ground. Toshinori, completely embarrassed, apologies multiple times and begins to pick up everything off of the floor when the girl says not to worry about it and begins to help pick things up using her quirk to levitate a few of the small items into her hand. Toshinori notices and remarks, that's quite an interesting quirk you have. The ability to move objects like that is very useful. The girl replies, not really, I can only levitate small objects, it's kind of worthless for anything other than grabbing the remote without getting up. Toshinori then says, hey, I know a few people who'd love to be able to do that, including me. The girl and Toshinori share a laugh, then he introduces himself. With the girl then introducing herself, it's nice to meet you, Toshinori. I'm Inko. The two of them being to talk while waiting for their trains and eventually go their separate ways, but not before exchanging phone numbers. After that, Toshinori and Inko become close friends and even develop slight feelings for each other, but besides that, nothing much changed for Toshinori's school life and education to become a pro hero. That is until Toshinori's master Nana Shimura is killed by All For One. Toshinori, just like in canon, is devastated by it and becomes more determined to defeat All For One, but Inko notices that something's wrong and visits Toshinori to check up on him. During the visit, Toshinori decides to confide to Inko, telling her how someone who was like family to him had been killed by a villain, being sure to leave out any specifics and detail about what really happened and the secret of One For All. After Toshinori finishes telling Inko this, he begins to cry, but Inko runs up and hugs him tight and says, I'm so sorry you lost someone close to you, Toshinori. I can't imagine how much pain you're feeling right now, but I'm here for you. Toshinori then thanks Inko for being so kind. And not too long after that, Inko and Toshinori begin dating, though Toshinori does everything he can to keep it a secret, fearing that maybe All For One would target her to get to him. Then near the end of Toshinori's final year at UA, Gran Torino finds out about Toshinori's relationship with Inko and scolds him harshly, telling him how he was putting her at risk and needs to cut things off, but Toshinori refuses to do so and they begin to argue. Eventually, Gran Torino relents and says, okay, fine, but if you won't break things off, then you should at least tell her what she's getting into by staying with you so she knows the risks. In other words, tell her the truth about One For All and All For One. That is, if you trust her. Toshinori nods his head and agrees to tell Inko the truth. He then leaves and contacts Inko to meet up somewhere private, and when they do, Toshinori proceeds to tell Inko the full truth about his power, his master, and an awful villain named All For One, which shocks and confuses her. Toshinori then tells Inko that he understands if she's not comfortable being with him anymore, and if she wants, he'll leave her alone, but Inko just hugs Toshinori and says, I don't care about any of that. I love you and I'll be with you no matter what. The two of them embrace each other and promise to stay together no matter what. A promise that would be broken. After Toshinori leaves UA, he begins to travel abroad in the US to continue his studies and to learn more about being a pro. During this time, Inko and Toshinori have a long-distance relationship and continue to keep in touch, but other than that, nothing else changes until All Might makes his debut as a new pro hero and returns to Japan slightly sooner than originally to see Inko again. All Might uses disguises to meet with Inko in secret and to be with her when he wasn't doing hero work, all in an attempt to keep All For One from discovering their relationship, and they decided not to get married until the villain was no longer a threat. Then a few years later, Inko discovers that she is pregnant with All Might's child. Once All Might found out, he decided that in order to keep his unborn child and the woman he loved safe from any harm, he would need to leave and stay out of their lives. After a difficult conversation, they both agreed that it would be the best thing to do, and with the help of an old friend of Inko's, a man named Hisashi Midoriya, who will pose as Inko's husband and father of her child. Before All Might left, he promised to Inko that he'll always make sure that her and his child would be taken care of, and promised to come back once All For One was defeated. Then gave her and Hisashi special contact information so that he'll at least know how his child is doing, and so he can know if anything is going on or if they need help, and with that, All Might leaves to continue his fight against All For One. About 9 months later, Izuku Midoriya is born, and a day later Inko sends pictures to multiple family members of Izuku saying how she is a beautiful child now thanks to his incredible father, and sends it to All Might as well. Seeing the pictures, he gets a feeling of both joy and sadness, wishing he could be there right now, but knows that he has to defeat All For One now more than ever, not just because he's a hero but also to make a better world for his son to grow up in. As time moves on, Izuku grows up just like in canon and admires All Might just as much, which makes Inko even happier than originally because he's looking up to his father. Inko also continues to keep All Might up to date on Izuku with vague messages, acting like old friends, just keeping in touch. Everything is going fine until a visit to the doctors reveals that Izuku appears to be quirkless, which is still devastating to Izuku, though it hurts Inko slightly more to tell her son that he can't be a hero. A few days later, Inko tells All Might about how Izuku will never develop a quirk and is saddened by the news, knowing how awful his son must feel. More years pass and Izuku's life is pretty much the same as in canon. The man he believes is his father is working abroad and he doesn't really remember him much, and he is of course bullied by Bakugo and others for being quirkless. But then the day that All Might and All For One fight arrives, which ends with All Might still sustaining severe injuries, which limits how long he can work as a pro, but he believes that he killed All For One, and while in the hospital he decides to contact Inko. However, before he can, he has a falling out with Sir Night-Eye where the prediction of All Might's brutal death is revealed. However, it is different. When All Might gets a chance, he contacts Inko to tell her that he defeated All For One, but he wouldn't be coming home. Inko then asked but why, if All For One is gone, then why can't you finally be a part of your son's life? Why can't we be together again? All Might replies, because I've been out of our son's life ever since he was born. I don't feel I have the right to even call myself his father, and besides, if I did, then it would be for only a short while. All Might then explains how he'll die an awful death, leaving out many details about it. All Might then states, I don't want to show up and tell our son that I'm his father just for me to die and cause him grief. It wouldn't be right. He would be happier if he never knew the truth, and you'd be better off not seeing me like this. Inko begins to sputter, not understanding why he has to stay away and why it seems like he doesn't care about her or his son and doesn't want anything to do with them. All Might replies, I do care, I just can't be with you. I know you don't understand, but trust me, this is for the best. Inko sternly responds, okay fine, if that's how you feel then I won't push it. Apparently you never wanted to have a child and be a father or husband. At least not with me. I guess I was some little fling for fun, huh? Inko then hangs up and cries, feeling incredibly alone. All Might thinks about calling her back but knows it would just make things worse and decides to leave it where it is and to continue to be the symbol of peace for as long as he can, all while beginning the search for a successor. More years pass and things with Izuku are normal. Nothing in his life changes until one day when he's at school. His teacher mentions that Bakugo and him are both trying to go for UA, which causes everyone in the classroom to make fun of him and cause Bakugo to yell, seriously Deku, you think a weak little quirkless nerd like you can make it into UA or become a hero? Don't make me laugh. Bakugo then uses a small explosion to knock over Izuku's desk. The teacher quickly scolds Bakugo for doing that and calms the rest of the class down. After school, before Izuku leaves, Bakugo corners him and starts tormenting him like he did originally, and finishes by burning Izuku's notebook and throws it out the window while saying, you should just jump off the roof, that's all you're good for. Hell, you'd probably screw that up too. After that, Izuku finds his burnt notebook and takes a shortcut home, feeling depressed and thinking about giving up, but he then thinks of All Might and says to himself, no, All Might wouldn't give up, which means I shouldn't either. I will be a hero just like him and save people with a smile on my face. He then promises to himself that he'll never give up on his dream and will be a pro just like All Might, even without a quirk. Then on his way home from school, he passes under a bridge and notices an open manhole, when suddenly a massive amount of slug jumps out, grabbing onto Izuku and begins to suffocate him. The villain then says, stop struggling, just give in and this will be so much less painful, but I don't care either way, your body's mine now. Izuku continues to struggle, fearing that this is how he'll die, and begins to fall unconscious, but before he does, he sees a large silhouette appear and hears a voice yell, I am here, but passes out right before the villain is knocked out by a powerful shockwave from a punch. The man who saved Izuku is none other than his own father, All Might himself. All Might carries Izuku and puts him gently on the ground and notices that he seems familiar. All Might decides to look through Izuku's notebook and reads the name on it and realizes that he just saved his son's life. All Might thinks about leaving but doesn't, despite him not having much time left in his buff form. He chooses to sit down and wait for Izuku to wake up so he can finally meet and speak to his son for the first time ever. Luckily, All Might won't have to wait very long to do so. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive is a channel based on a variety of anime lore. If you are interested in content like this, make sure you click the icon on the top right corner or check the description below for a link to the channel. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Izuku wakes up dazed and confused, trying to remember what happened when he sees All Might and begins to fanboy out while also thanking him for saving his life. All Might then says, "Haha, no thanks necessary, young man. After all, it's what heroes do." Izuku replies, "So cool. Oh yeah, All Might, can you please sign my notebook? I'm a huge fan and I'd really appreciate it if you did." All Might says sure and takes the notebook and pen. "What's your name, young man?" Izuku replies, "I'm Izuku. Izuku Midoriya." All Might signs Izuku's notebook and hands it back to him, saying, "Young Midoriya, it is a pleasure to meet you and I'm happy you look up to me. You seem very bright. I can tell from your notebook that you're quite smart and think highly of heroes. Your parents must be very proud of you." Before All Might could continue talking to Izuku, he felt that he was about to reach his limit and quickly turns around and says farewell to Izuku, then jumps away. As All Might is traveling through the air, he notices that something doesn't feel right, and when he looks down, he notices Izuku latching onto his leg and begins to panic but doesn't try to push him off, knowing that he'll fall, so All Might heads to a nearby roof to land. After landing, All Might gives a much harsher lecture to Izuku for doing that. "What were you thinking? Doing something like that was stupid. You could have died. Explain yourself, young man." Izuku, taken aback by this, apologizes and begins to tell All Might how he wants to be a hero and asks him if he can be one even without a quirk. During this, All Might reverts to his weak form, which shocks Izuku, and All Might begins to explain his injury and his limitation to do hero work. Then with a heavy heart, All Might says to Izuku, "Young Midoriya, you clearly have a good heart, but unfortunately it is impossible to be a hero without a quirk. It's too dangerous for most people to be pros, but for someone without a quirk it's a death sentence." This shatters Izuku and breaks his heart. All Might is about to say something else, but before he can, him and Izuku hear a massive explosion nearby and they both run off the roof to see what's happening. After some running, All Might and Izuku come across a large crowd of people watching heroes trying to fight the slug villain to no avail and contain a fire as well. After All Might and Izuku push through the crowd and see what's going on, they both feel an immense amount of guilt, with both of them feeling helpless to do anything. Izuku and All Might continue to stand there motionless as all the heroes back out, until Izuku sees that it's Bakugo who's being attacked by the slug villain and instantly runs out to save him. And as Izuku does this, he begins to feel small bursts energy coursing through his body, increasing his speed, causing him to run faster than normal. And when he throws his bag at the slug villain, it has more power behind it, but not by any serious amount, and starts trying to get Bakugo out of the slug, which he's able to do a little better, but it still won't work. As All Might stands there watching his son trying to do something that the pros were scared to do, he feels Quilt for not acting the same and powers up to his buff form and jumps in to defeat the villain with a punch so strong that it changes the weather. After the villain is captured, All Might leaves as fast as he can before he goes back to his weak form, and while Bakugo gets praise from some of the pros, Izuku gets scolded for acting so recklessly. Then when a paramedic asks Izuku if he's okay, he mentions that he felt a strange feeling building up in his body, making him run faster and have more strength, but the paramedic replies that was probably just your nerves or adrenaline going crazy. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, but let your parents know about it so they can take you to the doctors if needed." Izuku is then given permission to leave and heads back home. On his way home, Izuku is stopped by Bakugo, who says, "Listen here, you damn nerd, I didn't need your help, got it? I was just fine without you getting in my way." Bakugo then walks away, and as Izuku walks in the other direction, he gets stopped by All Might in his weak form. Before Izuku can say anything, All Might says, "Izuku, I wanted to thank you for running and to save your friend. Seeing you do that inspired me to go beyond my limit and help when I was scared to do so." Izuku replies, "No, you really shouldn't thank me. I did something irresponsible by rushing in like that. I couldn't do anything because I'm quirkless. I really can't be a hero and save people without one." All Might responds, "No, I was wrong. You inspired me to do more when I thought I couldn't, and that's something a hero can do." All Might continues, "Not only that, but one thing that many heroes have in common is that their bodies move automatically to save those in need. Young Midoriya, I am sorry for being so weak and foolish. I truly believe that you too can become a great hero just like me." Izuku falls to the ground crying from pure joy of hearing his idol say that he could be a hero. All Might then says, "Izuku, there are many truths you should know and I will tell you them soon, but first I want you to know that I have chosen you as my successor, and to be the one to inherit my power. I want to give you my quirk." Izuku, confused, looks up teary-eyed with a dumbfounded expression and replies, "Oh wait. What the hell are you talking about?" After walking for a bit, they arrive at Izuku's apartment complex, where Izuku stops saying that this is where he lives and asks All Might why he wanted to come here. All Might responds, "To answer your questions and to see your mom again. We know each other." Izuku is completely surprised by this and starts asking a lot more questions, but All Might brushes them off until they get up to Izuku's apartment, where he unlocks the door and lets All Might in. As Izuku and All Might are walking through the door, Ko is in the kitchen not hearing or noticing them until Izuku stands in the living room ready to introduce All Might and says, "Hey mom." Ko, startled, jumps a little and while still facing away from them says, "Oh Izuku, I didn't hear you come in." Ko turns around and sees Izuku standing in the living room with a skinny, sickly looking man and asks, "I didn't know we had company. Who is this Izuku?" Before Izuku can say anything, All Might buffs up saying, "It is me here with some great news," and in a paw. All Might goes back to his weak form, coughing up blood, with Izuku helping him to sit on the couch as Ko stands there with a blank face. When she asks Tashinori, "Is that you?" Ko then gets a frustrated look on her face and continues, "I thought you did want anything to do with us anymore. What changed your mind all of a sudden?" Izuku looks at his mom confused as All Might replies, "A lot, as you can tell. I know I can't ever make it up to you, but I'm sorry for everything." After that, Ko looks at All Might and gets slightly concerned, asking him if he's okay and what happened, but Izuku interrupts, "Hold on. Mom, what did you mean when you said I thought you didn't want anything to do with us anymore, and how do you two know each other?" Ko looks at All Might, asking him if he didn't tell Izuku about their past yet, which he nods his head for yes. Ko then says, "Izuku, honey, I know Tashinori or All Might from back when we dated. We were really close, and then one day I found out I was pregnant with you." Izuku's eyes widen and he asks, "Wait, but if you two were dating during that time, does that mean you cheated on All Might?" Ko, flustered, says, "What? No, that's not it at all. Izuku, the truth is that All Might is your real father, not Hisashi." Izuku's face goes from surprise to shocked as he starts sputtering and freaking out. Ko is able to calm him down and explains how her and All Might met. After Ko does, Izuku asks why All Might wasn't around and why Hisashi pretended to be his father. That's when All Might answers his questions and starts to explain everything. "You see, Izuku, back before you were born, me and your mom dated. We kept our relationship a secret because of a powerful villain, the same one who gave me this injury. And I was scared of him hurting your mom, but when I found out that you were coming, I decided to stay out of your lives to keep you both safe." And Ko asked Hisashi to help by pretending to be her husband and your father, and after I defeated the villain, I still had to stay away. Izuku then asks, "But if you defeated the villain, then why stay away? Does it have something to do with your injury?" All Might replies, "Kind of. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about you meeting me like this and your mom seeing me looking like a literal skeleton, but that's not the main reason." Ko butts in, saying, "According to what you told me, your sidekick Sir Night-Eye looked into the future where he saw you die and you didn't want to show up to just pass away. Looks like you don't have a problem with doing that now." And Ko glares at All Might, waiting for him to respond. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called Anime Theory. Anime Theory mainly focuses on a large variety of mind-boggling anime theories. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. After a few minutes of silence, All Might takes a deep breath and replies, "That's not entirely it either. You see, Night-Eye saw me die a horrible death at the hands of a villain, but he also saw 2 other people die. In the future, he saw I came back into your lives and we were a family, but that also put you both in danger. The villain took your lives right before he took mine, and according to Night-Eye, your deaths were worse than mine." Ko and Izuku go pale hearing the future that Night-Eye saw. As Izuku sits down on a chair, try to process what he just heard, Ko goes into a tirade, yelling at All Might, "Are you serious? Something that bad happens to us? Why are here then? Are you saying you don't care if that happens to us now?" Ko continues to berate All Might when he finally says, "Ko, please don't worry. I care about you and our son more than anything. It's why I stayed away for so long, but the reason why I'm back now is because I think I've already changed the future, or can change it at least." Ko and Izuku look at All Might with curious looks as he continues to explain, "You see, when Night-Eye looked into the future, he saw events that have never happened, including me giving my quirk to someone. That was supposed to happen about a year ago. I don't know who I was supposed to give it to, but I know it wasn't Izuku. That's one of the reasons why I want to give him one for all to undoubtedly change the future." Surprised, Ko looks at All Might and asks, "Wait, you want to give our son one for all to change the future?" All Might answers, "Yes, but I also want to give him my quirk because he reminds me so much of myself back when I was quirkless. He wants to help people no matter what. Our son is exactly like me. We're so similar, and I want to give him the same chance I was given to be a truly great hero, like I know he can be." This helps to calm Ko and Izuku down. All Might then puts his hand out, saying, "Izuku and Ko, I'm sorry for not being in your lives until now, but please let me have a chance to be there for you both now. If you'll have me, that is. After All Might says this, Inko and Izuku look at each other, and Inko says that she's fine with All Might being around if Izuku is. All Might then looks at Izuku and puts his hand out, which Izuku shakes while smiling and saying, "I wish you were here while I was growing up, but I'm happy to have you here now and I'd be honored to be your successor. For 2 reasons now." All Might smiles and hugs Izuku as Inko starts to tear up, but during this Izuku remembers that during the slug villain incident a strange feeling was building up in his body, making him move faster and have more strength, and tells his mom and All Might about it. Once Izuku explains the strange feeling, Inko and All Might both look at each, agreeing that it's quite strange for something like that to happen, and decide to take Izuku to the doctors tomorrow for checkup. The next day, Inko and All Might take Izuku to the doctors, where a few tests are done, and after a couple of hours the doctor and Izuku return to the office where his mom and All Might are waiting for the results. As the doctor sits down, he says, "Okay, so I looked over Izuku and congratulations are in order. It seems he's finally awoken his quirk." Inko and All Might are surprised by this and ask what his quirk is. The doctor replies it appears to be a weak enhancement quirk. It seems to only increase his physical abilities like strength, speed, and durability with a boost of at most 0.5 times. It doesn't seem like much, but considering his quirk hasn't had time to fully develop, I think it can grow much stronger with proper training. After a short conversation, Izuku and his parents leave the doctors and spend the rest of the day either celebrating Izuku's new quirk or trying to come up with ideas on how to train his quirk and body to inherit one for all. The next day, All Might takes Izuku to a beach full of trash and explains that this is where he'll be training his quirk and improve his physical strength so he can inherit one for all, while also giving him a schedule to help ensure that his growth will be swift and effective, officially starting Izuku's 10 months of training for the UA entrance exam. During this time, Izuku grows by leaps and bounds, increasing not only his overall physical condition but his quirk as well. But a big change from what happened in canon is the fact that Izuku doesn't overexert himself, thanks to All Might being around much more often to help guide him. This helps more due to the fact that All Might is short of living with him and Inko during the training, allowing All Might to bond with his son and teach him more about One for All. But this also gives All Might a chance to reconnect with Inko, though they're not totally back together, but they are getting along decently well. Also, due to All Might being around so much and actually spending time with Izuku and Inko out in public, they come up with a story of why this man is around so much, and they start telling everyone that he's Izuku's stepdad and Inko's new husband, which works. However, Bakugo and a few others start to pick on Izuku about this when they found out because, well, of how All Might looks in his weak form, but other than that, nothing really happens. After about 9 months have passed, Izuku finally clears the entire beach of trash, completing his training, and All Might passes on One for All to him. The last month is used to train Izuku on how to use One for All, which is much easier due to Izuku having more knowledge about it, allowing him to control it slightly easier.